enhanced socialness. We've talked a lot about flexible rating. Something else we're going to do is finally add a pretty good group finder. We have a raid browser in the game today, and it's pretty terrible. And you guys probably forgot it was there. You can still access it. It's kind of a trick to find it. But we think this feature can be a lot bigger, a lot cooler, compete with the random matchmaking stuff that's already out there. There are some mods and add-ons that people have developed to do this already, and there's a ton of demand from you guys, so we're going to do it. It's going to be very browser-based. You can make a group to do anything. If you want to go back and work on your Shadowmourne, you want to go make a group to kill world bosses, you want to make a rated battleground team, you can do all of that here. It's all cross-realm. You can browse through, find a group of people that look like you want to hang out with, and get a group together. Stacking the deck is a new type of buff that you'll see in Dungeon Finder. Currently, we have the luck of the draw, where we give you rewards to encourage you to play with people in the random queue. Believe it or not, at the time, we were worried that people wouldn't use Dungeon Finder, so you had to give you a little bit of extra incentive there, and that worked out really, really well. So the way stacking the deck will work is it will give you a different type of bonus, in this case, bonus Valor. Imagine you get 10% bonus Valor for every friend that you queue with. And then that last bullet is indicating that if you do use Dungeon Finder for a random group, and you get to the end, you're like, hey, this worked out pretty well, do you guys want to re-queue? That will then count as a pre-made group, and you will also get the stacking the deck bonus. All right, let's talk about leveling. 10 levels are back. And we really want leveling to feel exciting. We made the change to the talent tree in Myst for a lot of good reasons, and we're really happy with that change overall. But it's a totally fair criticism that getting a new level doesn't feel as exciting as it did in the old day. Even getting plus 1% crit, as lame as that was better than getting nothing. But we want to stop handing out so many new abilities. We don't think it's going to be a great experience if you get 10 new buttons to stick on your bars as you level up from 90 to 100. This has been kind of a long time coming. It's amazing to kind of see the turnaround in the community that now everyone's like, you know what, I'm good. I don't need any more abilities. Stop giving me new abilities. So what we're going to try is from level 91 to 100, as you level up, you'll get some type of upgrade to one of your core spells. Some of these will introduce class changes that we already were planning on making to kind of make it feel like a bonus as you level up. But to be totally fair, some of them are just going to be passive bonuses. Think of them kind of like the old school spell ranks, except you won't have to visit your trainer or anything like that. You always gain a little bit of power just from gaining a level, but we're going to put a really big boost behind some of your spells so you can really feel it. Like if you suddenly had 20% bonus damage to execute, that's something you're going to feel the next time you go kill someone. But don't expect a ton of class changes overall. Like I said, a lot of these are going to be passive bonuses, not change for change's sake, just to give you a level 93 reward. These are some sample leveling rewards. Hopefully they'll stick, but it's the kind of ideas that you can see that we're playing with. Okay, let's talk a little about items. So our philosophy with itemization, this is like the best reward we can give out in the game, and it's really disappointing when the best reward we can give out in the game feels a little lame. We really want getting a new item to feel exciting. We think part of the problem here is all the modification you have to do when you get an item. It's really disappointing. You get a new helmet, and you're like, oh man, not gonna get a meta gem. Maybe I'll just keep it in my bag for a while, and maybe I'll get something better. That's awful. It's time to stop the madness. Hidden expertise. One of our core design values is to make something feel like a bonus. And we think we're at the point where hidden expertise don't feel like a bonus. You have to get to these magic numbers before you feel like you're really fully functional as your spec. Similar, dodge and parry are cool mechanics. Like, it totally makes sense that you're super nimble dude and you dodge out of the way of the dragon claw. But it just hasn't worked out really well as dodge and parry rating that you stack on gear. And we know, particularly lately, tanks are kind of bummed when they get avoidance on their gear. And remember, I'm going to talk a little bit about items here, but yesterday we talked about how we're going to clean up your bag space. I don't want anyone to freak out at all the different types of items we're going to drop, because hopefully you'll have a little more room to deal with it. So I think I have to credit Travis Day with the initial gone slide, but here we go. Now, again, your warrior will still be able to dodge. Maybe we can have more interesting mechanics, like following a successful whatever, you have a higher chance to parry the next attack, but you won't see it on gear. We will have tanking stats, and I can talk about that in a sec here. Oh, reforging. This is what we call an idea that sounded good on paper. But what it turned into is this terrible cascade where you get a new piece of gear, and now you have to reforge all of your old gear to hit some cap. And yeah, it'll be a little better without hidden expertise, but things like haste caps and crit caps are still out there. And overall, we think it just drags down the excitement of getting a new item when you know you're nowhere near being able to put it on yet. And there's more.
I like how we could get that kind of cheer when we introduced reforging and the same cheer when we get rid of it. It's awesome.
Then 7-0 will bring it back.
It's reverse psychology.
We'll get rid of it. Enchants are one of those other things. We really want enchants to feel like a bonus. Back in the day, you would get your avalanche, your crusader, whatever on your weapon. Those are a really big deal. Since then, we've kind of gone overboard, as we tend to do. And you're putting enchants on your bracers and stuff like that. What we really want to do is have a system where fewer items overall can be enchanted, but there's more choices for those individual items. So maybe we'll make multiple weapon enchants, and you pick the one that's good for your spec or your playstyle. I feel like I'm beating down on some of the professions a little bit here. Don't worry, we'll try to figure out to make sure to minimize the economic impacts to enchanters out there. But we don't think it's fair to everyone to have to deal with so many enchants just so you can have a little bit of gold in the bank. We're going to do something similar with gems. Very few items are going to have gem sockets, but when they do, they're going to be a really big deal. They'll be something exciting. You might only have a gem on a couple of your tier pieces, for example, but it'll be a pretty big stat bonus. I don't think we'll do any like multiple socketed items, so there's no reason to have set bonuses again. And likewise, we think meta gems aren't really a decision. You just get the one that's right for you as a healer or a DPS, and that decision's over. But if you think of the way like Warforging works today, where there's a random chance that your item could be a little better, there's a random chance that it might have a gem on it. So you might get a weapon, and then a few days later, you get a weapon with a gem socket on it, and now you have the decision of, is this an upgrade you want to use? Do you want to pass to one of your buddies in the group, and so on? Whoa. Nobody's happy but the paladin when the int plate drops. So going forward, we're just going to have plate. If plate drops and you're a plate using class, it's potentially something you can wear. Same thing is true of mail, leather, and cloth. So the way this will work is this is awesome. I get all the good slides. If you're a ret paladin, like most of you are, the plate will have strength on it. If you change to your holy spec, the strength on the plate will change to int, and you can just wear that.
Most popular change ever made.
So even in like PvP, for example, they'll just be the priest set from now on. You don't have to, decide you want the healer one or the DPS one. So I'm talking strictly about armor here. So, helmet, shoulders, legs, all of those very visible pieces. We still want jewelry, cloaks, trinkets, and weapons to be more role-focused. If you talk to healers, many of them will tell you that spirit is actually a pretty interesting stat, and you can decide how much spirit you want on your gear in a way that, say, the mage can't decide how much hit they want on their gear. So jewelry, cloak, trinkets, weapons can still be more role-focused. You might have items with spirit, in which case the healer would be interested. You might have an item without spirit, in which case other people might be interested, or the healer might be as well. Some of these will be less, spec agnostic, so they'll be more spec agnostic. So they may just have attack power, spell power, rather than being like the agility spirit item. And then to replace the loss of dodge and parry, we think we're back at a place where we can just put armor as a good tanking stat. Active mitigation has worked out really well, and we think there's room just to have armor. It won't be the stat on every piece because it's not going to be on all of your actual armor, but it can be on things like the rings and cloaks. Tertiary stats. So it might seem like we're really streamlining gear here, but what we're really trying to do is give it a long tail. It's not fun when you go for a long time and don't get your weapon and feel like you're just really far behind everyone else. But at the same time, we don't want you to gear up, in 2 weeks and be done, and then say like, dude, when's the next raid coming out? So we're kind of expanding the idea of warforging. I mentioned we're doing it with gems. We're also adding these bonus tertiary stats. So you may get a glove one day that has an extra stat on it that does something cool. These don't count against the budget. It's just a bonus when it happens. And here's some examples of tertiary stats we're playing with. I'm not going to read all these. You guys can see the slides. Now again, it's really unlikely, unless you're very dedicated or very lucky, that you're going to have your sturdiness set, because there's just not going to be that many pieces out there. You're not going to be able to stack sturdiness, and guess what? You can't reforge it. We added a little bit about will stack down there because we realize our movement bonuses are kind of difficult to understand about what works with what. So we rebuilt the system to where pretty much any movement speed you get will work with any other movement speed up to some, sane level druids. Cleave's been an interesting stat. We played with it a little bit on the trinkets in the latest raid tier. And we don't think it's necessarily fun to be like, I'm going to put on my cleave set, I'm going to take off my cleave set. But if you get it as a bonus on some of your items, hey, that could be pretty cool. You'll do a little bit of extra AE cleaving sometimes. Item squish. We tried it before, we're trying it again. Why? I'm a pretty simple guy at the end of the day, and I have trouble understanding when I see that many zeros on the screen. Make whatever jokes you want. Most of our item inflation comes from previous raid tiers, but it's much less important that Blackwing Lair gear is a massive upgrade over Molten Core gear. Yeah, people are still running that old content, and we're cool with that, but it's not that big a deal that the Blackwing Lair gear is much higher item level anymore. So we're just going to flatten out all of the big jumps that come at the previous raid tiers at these levels. This is current insanity. And these are some slightly more sane numbers. Okay, a bunch of caveats here. I hear people cheering, but I know there's people out there grumbling too. dumbing the game down. Your relative power will not change. If you look at percentages, if you are a healer and you know how much your flash heal heals on your tank, the bar will still jump by the same amount. The relative power of 5.4 gear will not change. So if you're currently a heroic raider, your gear will be just as powerful as it is today relative to all the other gear, and that'll still translate into going into 6.0. If it takes you 5 seconds to kill a Timeless Isle Gulp Frog, it will still take you 5 seconds to kill a Timeless Isle Gulp Frog. And I should probably say this one 4 or 5 times, but if you like to solo old content, you can still solo old content. We'll make sure that happens. We knew a lot of people were trying to get their Ashes of Alar, trying to get their hammer from Ragnaros, but it turns out a lot of people do this all the time, and it brings a lot of extra value to the game for players who want to keep supporting it. And if you've played on the floor, the item squish is already in, and if you didn't even notice it was in, then awesome. That wraps up our presentation. Looks like we have about 10 minutes left, so we would love to entertain some questions. Be nice to stick to the Warlords of Draenor topics for now, though we are doing a second Q&A later on today that's pretty much open-ended.
We also appear